last week, and I'm Lenore Barrientos, the board president for NAMI Valley of the Sun. And it's really a great pleasure for me to have Natalie, to have heard her last week in the wonderful presentation, and to have her again this evening to help all of us regarding her knowledge of addiction. Natalie has been an incredible board member and an incredible volunteer over the years with NAMI. She's done so many different things, and she's been on the board with me for 5 years, and she's just, I wish I could clone her and have every board member be exactly like her. And I'm just going to say one last thing, because I don't think people get to hear this very much, but Natalie is really an amazing fundraiser. She has raised in past years at the walk and at the breakfast, she has raised some big dollars. And you know, we really need finances. We really need money to be able to support our programs. And so, Natalie, thank you so much for doing that. I know it's been a lot of work, but it's been very helpful to us. So take it away, girl.
All righty. Thank you, Lenore. You're so gracious. All righty. Let me just start by saying that tonight is the part 2 of my presentation, and we'll focus on drugs. What I am focusing on are over-the-counter and prescription drugs, and I will explain why when we get into the presentation. I am leaving some of the other drugs outside of this, including marijuana and medical marijuana. Just a little bit too much to handle all in one section. I'm going to start with a short review of what we did last week, because some people were not on last week and I don't want them to miss out, but it will be short and it will be a review. I have 2 activities that I'm hoping to get to in this presentation. And so that kind of leads me to the next thought, which is if we could do like we did last time, and I will go ahead and present for about 35 minutes, and then we will move into 1 or 2 of those activities and then open it up for question and answer. I hope that's okay. If anybody's not okay with that, if you could send a message or something of that sort, that would be great. Okay, I also wanted to acknowledge something that is very near and dear to my heart, and a complete and total oversight from last week's presentation. And that is that I have been in the addiction field for quite a while, both as a consumer of services, but also as a clinician, and also in my work in law enforcement, that I have a tendency to refer to people who are have issues with alcohol and issues with addiction as alcoholics and addicts. We are NAMI. I know very well that the best way to address these special populations of people is no different than if we had done that with persons with mental illness versus the mentally ill. So my apologies if I offended anybody last time. It is definitely worth noting, and I would like to thank that person who brought that to my attention. So with that, we are going to move on. I'm going to pull up my screen share, and here we go. And here he is. Oh, where'd it go? Here we go. And we're starting from here. All right. So again, I am a board member for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Valley of the Sun affiliate, and this is part 2 of the Thoughtful Thursdays addiction section. In addition to this, I have some other jobs that I do. I am retired law enforcement after 20 years as of last January from a local precinct here in town. And I'm glad to be out of that business. It's not a very good, it's not a good field to be in right now. It's just, it's very sad. It's just, it's a situation that we all need to address, and I know that we as a community and as a nation will. But I do encourage people to be open-minded that our law enforcement, fire personnel, etc., provide a very valuable service to our community. And many of our law enforcement agencies here in town have been through training for crisis intervention team training, which is a 40-hour week program that allows officers and other public safety personnel to learn how to deal with people who do have issues with addiction, mental illness, and the like. And I'm very proud of those programs. I've been a part of those programs for years. Officers who choose to get CIT certified and trained are those that really do care about what goes on in our communities and do make a difference. That's important to say that. I'm also the clinical supervisor at an addiction treatment facility here in town called the River Source. I also do some online counseling for a company called Stepstone Connect. And my primary population with them is first responders who are dealing with mental health and addiction related issues. And then I have a small counseling business myself. All right, with no further ado, I'm going to move forward. So I talked briefly about the difference between substance and process addictions. And we talked about alcohol last time, and we're going to talk about drugs tonight. Most of these others are what we call process addictions. They are not substance addictions. Substance use disorder, I'm adding it here. Whoa. The key is that when we talk about addiction, we recognize it's complex. It involves a compulsive use, and it's when people use despite serious health and social consequences. And I'm going to add criminal consequences. One more time. And this is the American Psychiatric Association, their definition of substance use disorder. This has taken on different definitions over the period of time. Way, way back. Alcohol and drug addiction are not new. They are old processes. These are the phases. Some people start out with experimental, then they move to social and recreational. Again, a reminder, not everybody who drinks is an addict, and that some people become addicted on their first use. Then we have harmful dependence, and then we have the addiction where people use to feel normal. Okay, this is a new slide, and it has to do with why do people use drugs. Drug addiction is a learned pattern of behavior. It becomes maladaptive, but in the sense it becomes a behavior that supports the ongoing ability to perform in a person's mind. And that is because it is rewarded. And most drugs and alcohol deliver dopamine, which is an amazing chemical in the brain that is a pleasure drug. Now, it's not exactly that simple, but in many ways it really is that simple. So when we look at this little mouse right here, this is one of the experiments that they did, and you can't really see it right here, but on the top of the mouse's head is this little electrode that is attached to something up here, and here is window 1 and here is window 2. There is nothing on the other side of those windows. They are empty. They might be perceived as a way out of this little cage, but what happens is that when the mouse goes to this first window, they get a jolt of dopamine. That's the key here, or a pleasure sensation, I should say. And what happens is in a very short period of time, this mouse never comes to window number 2. It's like the ugly date is standing behind this window, and this one is the prize. So we talk about that in that the reward system is actually activated by this reinforcement of, and it can be dopamine, which is present in many drugs, sex, food, all kinds of things. So you can see the attraction here. And most people will return to what feels good again and again and again, even though it is a maladaptive behavior. Sorry. I talked about three causal therapies or theories last time. One was the choice people choose to use. One was a medical model. And then there was another one that I talked about that kind of has things from each of these. There are actually other theories out there about why people use. So this is just the short story to get us started. Trauma is very common with addiction, to the point where some of us in the field actually refer to it as trauma addiction as a one word. It's one of those things you don't find in the dictionary, but we do use it. This is one of the things that I want to come back to as a potential activity. So in the event that you're watching this and you would like to participate in this, I'd like you to make sure that you have a pencil and a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be big, but it would need to include for 10 things. 10 different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and a score of 0 to 1. But I'm going to come back to this. I just wanted you to know that. The reason it's here is because it is one of those things that we look at, because when we talk about trauma plus addiction, there are individuals that are very high risk for addiction, and that is kids who had trauma between the ages of 0 and 18. We will come back to this. Do not let me forget. I do not want to run out of time. I want to do this with you. I think you will find something helpful in here. As a review again, we have addiction plus mental illness, and this is what we call co-occurring or dual diagnosis. Down here is the piece that's important. Approximately 37% of alcohol abusers and 53% of drug abusers also have a serious mental illness. Very common, not discommon. We talked about the stages of behavior change, meaning that when someone's ready to make a change, so stopping drinking, stopping drugs, stopping eating, stopping gaming, whatever it is, it's usually through this process. I also shared with you the process of what it's like to be a family member behind the scenes and how you can help them at each one of these steps. We're moving into the piece on drugs, so this will, for the most part, be newer information for you. And this is the piece that has to do with the opioid epidemic. First of all, this is the word up here, opioid. It is the strangest darn thing to spell because it's I-O-I. But it's interesting that it has made its way into every spell check as something very important. We have seen in the last few years these numbers explode in our country, but not just in our country. And you can also see that starting here about 2014 and 15, the numbers went really high. This up here are the synthetic opioids known as fentanyl. That would be one. Heroin is right about here, and then oxycodone here, cocaine, meth, and methadone down here. Methadone is a counteractive drug, a MAT drug, to help with people who are addicted to typically methamphetamine, but others. So I did this presentation or something very similar to this. This is just a note for fact. I left it out of here because gosh only knows where we're going with the country, but I was comparing the rates for the opioid epidemic, deaths and overdoses in our own state to the coronavirus back in March. And the opioid epidemic was still giving higher numbers. Today, I can't say that. The coronavirus actually has higher numbers due to death today compared to the opioid epidemic. That being said, we have a huge problem with the opioid epidemic. One of the things that is important to know is that these are the drugs that are referred to as opioids that you might recognize their names: oxycodone, morphine, fentanyl, heroin. They are used for pain management. They are incredibly addictive. Again, it meets that pleasure chemical in the body. and it connects, they make friends, they date, they get married. And then what happens when there's a divorce between one of those pain meds and your body, there are very consequential withdrawals from those drugs. So back to those statistics that I was sharing with you, the statistics here is that there is some federal money. There's also some state money that is put towards kind of addressing and curbing the opioid epidemic in our country. It does not care what socioeconomic background you come from, male, female, young, old, retired, not retired, in school, out of school, does not. It has no culture, no religious boundary, nothing. There are some people who get addicted to opioids through a simple surgery that they have no other precursor for that. Others kind of stumble on it through their active addiction, doing whatever they're doing, and it just kind of falls into the space. But it is so problematic with our overdose and our death rates, and also it's also very big with our emergency rooms. And therefore we have an epidemic is what we have here. And so the federal government and state has put some money towards this. It is kind of taking a back seat at this time, obviously. No. Let's go. There we go. So what I tried to do is I tried to take these off the internet so that you could see a picture of it. So before I start this, there were two things that really struck me in my law enforcement career with pharmaceutical drugs and kids. One was that it was back in 2005, that I ran into my first opioid death with teenagers, and they had just left what was called a farming party. Now, not the farm out in the Midwest with cows and great tomatoes. This was a farming party that's spelled P-H-A-R-M-A, farming. And what happened is kids would get together and they would take a big Tupperware bowl and they would clean out and bring with them and clean out some of the medications in what many people had at that time, still do, the medicine cabinets in their bathrooms. So without any indication of what these drugs were, they would put them all together, and then they would play what many of us remember as kind of a spin the bottle type of game. And when it became a person's turn, then they would basically take the drug, and then it was kind of an interesting kind of, I can't even put a word on it really, but that they were young people and they were very curious, and this is how they were being curious. But that's how I kind of came into this, was back then. And I thought that was rather novel. It was at a high school that was a well-known, well-supported, socioeconomically comfortable high school in our community. So anyway, this right here is our barbiturates, also known as phenobarbital. You might know them from the regular name or trade name of Nembutal and Seconal. And with these, look at what it does. It helps with anxiety, sleep problems, and seizures. I can't even begin to tell you, as a mental health professional, how many people are really struggling with sleep and anxiety. So this is not a far reach for some people to consider. The withdrawals from this medication are significant. So that is a challenge with this. Anytime we overuse something and when we stop something, those are the two issues that we have to be very careful of. All right, next we're going to move to amphetamines, and I'm going to take the two Adderall and then That's the one that mostly we hear about. And it's used to treat people with ADHD. Now, it's not just kids with ADHD. If you've ever met an adult who has ADD or ADHD, it's painful to watch because they are typically incredibly bright people and they're just having a really hard time trying to organize their thoughts and follow through. They make great people for artistic kind of things, creative things. They're great at developing businesses, but they have an amazing administrative assistant. So people with ADD and bipolar disorder are not stupid people. They're bright people. Their brains are just struggling to keep some sense of semblance to organization about it. So it's not uncommon to find adults also on Adderall or these other two drugs. These drugs are also used to do some other things that people struggle with, including keeping their weight down. So this drug will pop up oftentimes for women who want to get help with their weight. And it also helps to do the other, boost your energy and help you to be more alert. Now, so far, I've gotten the magic cocktail to sleep better at night, have more energy, lose weight, and not have any anxiety. Do you see the problem? These are, for the unknowing person, some pretty quick fixes. And it sounds good if you're really struggling in those areas. Methylphenidate is also known for ADHD. Concerta is one that I see, and also Ritalin. So in the treatment field, working with people who have addiction, when people come in and they're on these drugs, they're very problematic. And we have to explore alternatives at this time, which can be really hard to teach, to kind of encourage somebody to explore other things when it's been working for them, even though, again, it's been having some nasty effects on them. Oh, the benzos. Now, why a benzo has what looks like a heart in the middle of it when they are so deadly is beyond me, but they're also known as Xanax, Klonopin, and Valium. They also help with anxiety, where's my thingy? Anxiety, panic attacks, and sleeps. If these are stopped abruptly, they can kill you. So we do have to be very careful with the benzodiazepines. Sleep medicines. This one here is an Ambien 10. This one here is an Ambien 5. This is a Sonata, and this is the Lunesta. Very common drugs for people who have sleep disturbances. I personally have been on Ambien before. I personally have found it to be very helpful, but I cannot take a full pill. If I take a full pill, the jury's out. I have no idea. To the point where in the recent years, they have actually recommended that women cut this pill in half. Most physicians will say, cut this pill in half, mostly this one here. Okay, so they're learning as they're going. We're learning as we're going. These are common drugs. They are also addictive. So I am no longer taking this Ambien as I once was, even though it worked. I didn't overuse it. I underused it. But as soon as I learned that it was addictive, I stopped. So just be careful and make sure that you have your physician's support for doing that. Codeine. This is another one. It's used for pain. Now, if you're catching a theme here, you're catching that many of these are to deal with pain. So pain, anxiety, panic, and maybe even a little boost. But this is an interesting drug because in low doses, it can help with pain. But in high doses, it can create euphoria. And I have heard people with addiction actually say that they would rather have one grand day of euphoria and then go into 3 days of being down and out, which doesn't make sense to me. But it doesn't matter what makes sense to me. It matters what makes sense to them. Next is oxycodone. the Percocets, and we hear now Perc 30s in the community. This is very common. They also are used for pain. Now, we're looking at pills, and this might be an opportunity for me to talk about how else can I ingest this, okay? Because you can also crunch these up, very common, and then they can be snorted. And some of these can be injected. Now, how would you inject the snort? You would actually add like water to it or something else. But in any event, those are ways to get it into the body. Now, why snort? Why inject? Because it's the fastest way to get an effect. That's why. Next, we have the Lortabs and the Vicodin. Again, also known as in high doses, can be problematic. Most of these drugs will affect your respiratory system, and they can make for a very hot body. In law enforcement, I've seen people in jail, and it's always an interesting thing. They'll take their clothes off and in the jail cell, and I don't know if it's because of a mental health problem where they are having a psychotic episode and just simply feeling very hot from that, or if they are actually having high doses of some of these medications. Now, this drug is also known as a decongestant. These are the ones that have been removed from on the shelf to behind the counter at your local Walgreens. It is one of the reasons that they moved it is because it is one of the ingredients that is in methamphetamine. I had mentioned earlier about the drug methadone that is used to counter or treat medically assisted some of these drugs. And I actually met in the field a woman who was 70 and still on methadone. So it does happen. And it actually happens more frequently. That's the oldest person that I have ever known. This is DXM, another one that we have to be careful for. It's used for cough and colds and those kinds of things. Again, these are over the counter. So the next slide is I'm going to kind of move off what the picture looks like and a little bit about the drugs. I just wanted to let you know what some of them look like, because sometimes we will encounter someone. So it could be a family member, it could be a friend, you know, some loose pills in their purse or in their pocket. And I just want you to get an idea for what they look like. You can always go on the internet and kind of identify what a pill looks like if it is manufactured according to one of our companies. There are some things that are manufactured, of course, that don't look like what they are on here. All right, moving on. So I wanted to kind of map out what treatment looks like. So in the event that you have a family member, you yourself, identify that there is an issue with drug abuse. That for some people, it starts with detox. It starts and ends there. That's all they need. They just go in for a 3 to 5 day detox. They are observed medically. They might get some medically assisted treatment during that time. They might also get an infusion where you just kind of get a drip of a lot of vitamins. They're kind of feel-good bags of a lot of good stuff. And it's a way to just kind of detox the body. It's so important that if you're on one of the medications we talked about that where you abruptly stop, that you have medically assisted treatment. The next would be for inpatient hospitalizations, and insurance companies cover different things, but for the most part, inpatient programs are about 30-day programs, whether insurance covers the total or not, in an optimum way. Now, back in the 70s, I had 2 family members go through the Meadows, and each of them were approved for 90-day programs, which is really unheard of these days. So treatment gets less and less and less, and a lot depends on the insurance. A lot depends on how that person's doing. A lot depends on whether they've been in treatment before and how many times they've been in treatment. It is not uncommon to go to treatment multiple times before one really gets it. The next one is partial hospitalization. Insurance companies like this one because it's less expensive than the other two, and it's for 6 hours a day for 5 days a week. So you spend a lot of time with a group and a facilitator, and you go through a variety of topics, and you deal with a lot of relapse prevention and coping skills and a variety of other things. So you're getting psychoed, you're getting some experiential experiments and theories and interventions, and then you're also getting a lot of things like CBT, DBT. There's a whole list, a whole bunch of alphabet lists. And then we have intensive outpatient, which is the next step down, and that's for 3 hours for 3 days a week. Again, less expensive. So we started at the most expensive and worked our way down. And then general outpatient programming, which can include individual, couples, family. This is kind of on a PRN basis. Now, that oftentimes can be included with the PHP IOP. There are some other outside addiction recovery programs and support groups. I've only named a few, but I wanted to name them. The 12-step program is from Alcoholics Anonymous, dating back to early 30s and 40s, from Bill and Bob, and very popular for many people in addiction programs. Then we have Celebrate Recovery. This is a similar 12-step model, but it is within, it has a little bit more of a Christian edge to it, and it is definitely kind of sponsored by a church, but it's very similar. So for people who identify as Christian, really want to do a religious-based spiritual program, that might be an option. Smart Recovery is a little bit different. It doesn't use the 12-step model, and it is more cognitive in basis, and meaning that it has less of the God part and trusting of a higher power. It's based a lot on cognitive and logic. Recovery Dharma is another one, and it is based on Buddhist principles, and that also is becoming more and more popular. I have several people right now that I am working with on Recovery Dharma. MAP programs are medically assisted programs. We're going to do a little bit more of that, and then holistic options and also include acupuncture, massage, tai chi, anything that we can teach people that has to do with additional therapies that they can do that will help them connect to themselves and to their spiritual sense and to others in non-addictive ways. I'm going through this very fast. This one's an interesting slide though, because this is a big hot topic right now, and that is what I called MAT drugs. There are programs that do just MAT drugs, and they're very effective if that's what the individual family wants. So Vivitrol is one. It's a sobriety maintenance drug, and it has a challenge because it can be potentially addictive. So that's a struggle here. Suboxone, that is used as a detox drug also, and it's for detox from painkillers and heroin. And what it can help do is reduce the cravings, and it can alleviate some of the withdrawal symptoms. But again, people can get high on Suboxone, so it has to be medically monitored and appropriately. Methadone, as I mentioned before, is another one that helps addicts with the detox process and also with withdrawal symptoms. And it also has the potential for developing into addiction. So you can see this is a blessing and a curse all within itself. But there are some people who absolutely, bar none, they need a MAT drug. They just are not able to do it because of the damage to their brain to this point. So it is an option. Naloxone, this is what you can now pick up at pharmacies. I was issued a couple of these while working in law enforcement, and they do have an expiration date on them. You do need to be careful. But what happens is if an individual stops breathing and becomes unresponsive, doesn't even really matter what it's about, because you can't hurt them by giving them this. But if they are overdosing from an opioid, it will help them. It will help address and balance out the receptors going on in their brain. This is all about receptors in the brain, either flooding or starving. That's what this is about. That's what these drugs do. So in any event, a Narcan here will basically, once it's put in to the nose, this one's a nasal, so it goes like this. It just basically kicks off the opioids that are on the receptor, just kicks them off so that they can't clog things up, and that's what's causing the overdose. I've had clients that have overdosed even while in treatment, and when paramedics and police arrived, used 5, 6 of these in one setting to come back to life. So a lot of lives have been saved by these two drugs. This is not necessarily a new drug. Naloxone was way back when I was a teenager in the 70s. It's just takes on, but it was only issued by a paramedic at that time. I actually have this in my purse right now, and I have it in my office in the event that I need it in the office. Overdoses do happen even while people are in treatment. Oh, where did that go? No. I have no clue. Didn't like what I hit. All right, let me pull it back up again. Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. So there is some narcotic-free pain management. This is not an area that I'm real familiar with. I just wanted to bring it up to you so that you knew it did exist. I just don't know a whole lot about it. And then also you can see here that on this slide, they are talking about the importance of doing, lost my cursor here, folks. Anyway, the third one down, talking about the physical therapy, cognitive behavioral, holistic interventions such as yoga, acupuncture, massage. So these things are super important. All right, so this is what's my time? How am I doing? Oh, shoot. I want to go over this and then we're going to go to that last one. So we use a scale in our recovery at many locations. This is not unique to the place that I'm at currently. And what we're doing is we are assessing for people's withdrawal from symptoms. And what I want you to hear here is that this is common. People have withdrawal symptoms sometimes for up to 6 months, maybe even a year, depending what it is. And it comes in a lot of different forms. So I wanted to kind of share two different perspectives here. Here's one. So if I'm asking as a clinician, you know, are you having nightmares? The answer might be, I am having nightmares. I've had 3 in the last 5 nights. They're about death and dying, and I'm in every single one. I don't know how to get out of them, and it's scary. It wakes me up and I can't get back to sleep. So how much sleep did you get that evening? Well, I probably got about 4. It took me 2 hours to get to sleep, and then once I had that dream, I had to get up because I couldn't go back to sleep. Okay. Or it could be what we call mental fog. So are you feeling like you're having difficulty focusing, concentrating, you're super distractible, those kinds of things? Are you kidding? I'm having the hardest time even sitting still. I have no idea what I just did an hour ago. I don't even know if I ate breakfast. I know I did, but I can't tell you what I did. I don't know did I take my pills? I don't know if I took my pills. Shoot, where did I put my keys? And I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to follow you, but it's just not working for me today. I'm having a really difficult time. Oh, everything is so confusing. I'm trying, I'm really trying. Please don't give up on me. I'm trying very hard. Anxiety. So I know that when you first came to us, you were experiencing a lot of anxiety about, you know, social situations and being around family. I think those were the 2 that you kind of rated kind of high. How are you doing with that in the past week? Oh my gosh, I've gotten to the point where I don't even want to call home anymore, because if I call, I have to, it's so hard for me. I'm so afraid of what they're going to say. I'm trying to do a good job. I'm trying to do everything you tell me what to do, but I'm still having cravings. I'm still having lots of pain and anguish over everything that I've done in the past. I don't like to talk to people that I've really pissed off and hurt, and these are people that I love. And my anxiety around social skills, about the only, I don't even know how to answer that. I like my roommate. People in group are okay. Yeah, it's hard. My heart is racing. Pain. Are you having any pain right now? I am having some pain, but the pain I'm having is a different kind of pain. It seems like the pain has traveled. It was in this place, but now it's in this place. And, part of it is that I can't sleep at night because of the pain, but I can't take any pain medication. So I have to think about the sleeping medication. And I really don't want to take sleep medications. But then the doctor says that, if I can just practice meditating before I go to bed, that maybe that would help. And have you ever tried meditating before you go to bed? My mind is racing. It's going around and around like that. And all I can think of is my back hurts. Cravings. Are you having any cravings? How's that going? How do they feel? Where are you feeling them in your body? And, what kind of cravings are you having cravings for? Well, the cravings that I'm having are like, oh my God, that sounds so good. I can remember the last time that I did that. And I miss having those euphoric moments where I didn't have to worry about anything. And I walked into Circle K just to get a drink, and then I ran across the vodka, and I was standing right there. And then they were playing a song on the radio, and it reminded me of the last party that I went to and the girl I was kissing. And oh my gosh, it was just, oh geez, yes, I'm having cravings. A lot of cravings. And then when people talk about things in this group, I feel like I'm having cravings. I mean, I can't get away. Cravings are cravings. They're still very, 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 very present in my life. All right, so how about agitation? Have you not been watching me? Emotional roller coaster. Like, how are you doing? Are you having some depressed days? Are you having some happy times? Are you feeling like you're crying at times for no reason? What makes you feel happy these days? I have no idea who I am. I have no idea who I am. I have no idea who I am. One day I can be this, one moment I can be this. I can start out the group feeling like this, and then I can end up in the group feeling like the opposite. So my point to you is that this is how we assess people and their improvements. And so this happens in their programs. This also happens in sponsor-sponsee relationship. It happens between a therapist and a client. It happens in a lot of different ways. What I want you to get from this is not my acting skills. What I want you to get from this is that this is real for people who are in recovery. And it is so big. It is like so big, it is the one and only thing they can really pay attention to. It's a full-time job to get clean and sober. Relapse triggers, these are certain things that people identify that just make them want to use. Sometimes I refer to them as activations rather than relapse triggers, because consumers of our services oftentimes find that word overused, so I do that. Now, appetite. So appetite and sleep can certainly be affected by a variety of withdrawals from medications. Sleeping too much, sleeping not enough, having no appetite, having a lot of appetite. And then bowel movements. This is something that's very physical in nature. Again, we're talking about addiction, the brain, the whole body. It's a whole piece here. And so people who are on pain meds oftentimes have difficulty with bowel movements. And so we do have to monitor those. And of course, suicidal thoughts. When we ask people in treatment to basically talk about and get honest about their thoughts and feelings, and they have no way to escape the depth of some of these feelings, we do have to assess for suicidal thoughts. Whew. Now, I want to go back to that slide that has to do with, everybody have their piece of paper and a pencil. All right, I'm presuming that people are okay if we go forward. This means no questions tonight. But I will leave up at the very end ways you can contact me if you wish. I hope that's okay. I just really feel like you will learn. When you're taking this test, I want you to take it for yourself. Please do not share with me or anyone else on this Zoom meeting here what your score is. I want you to just assess it. Also, I want you to ask yourself, how would my family member who may be dealing with mental illness and addiction answer this question? If you want, you can actually make 2 columns, okay? One for you and one for them. First question, did a parent or other adult in the household, big important thing, you are answering for your life from the ages of 0 to 18, not 18 in one day, 18, okay? When you were 0 to 18. Number 1, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? If yes, answer 1. Number 2, did a parent or other adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? If yes, answer 1. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch, fondle you, or have you touch their body in a sexual way, or attempt or actual have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? If yes, answer 1. Number 4, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? If yes, answer 1. Number 5, did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? If yes, answer 1. 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? If yes, 1. Was your mother or stepmother often, very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her, or sometimes, often, very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? 1, if yes. Again, this isn't about you. This is about your mother or stepmother. Number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or who used street drugs? If yes, answer 1. 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? If yes, answer 1. Did a household member go to prison? If yes, answer 1. Please total up your 1s over 10. And let me address this real quickly. This scale is meant to assess for traumatic events or experiences in children between the 0 and 18 as a predictive measure for if that individual will be at risk for medical issues, i.e. mental health issues, i.e. addiction later in life. The primary reason is to assess for medical. What happened is that when they started to look at the data from this, and this was not from any one particular group of people, it was from a wide variety of people, so not just kids at risk. But what they found is that those that had higher scores were at risk for medical problems later in life, and we know because people taking the test were adults, but that they were at risk for also addiction and mental health issues. So that's how we got to that data about mental health and addiction. You might be thinking to yourself, well, my score is 4 and below. Score, this is very gross. a very gross summary. There is much more to this assessment. But I want you to know that there is an assessment like this, so you can go online if you want to look at it and investigate more. But for scores of 4 and below, this is considered a lower scale. They identified 5 as a cutoff point. So 5 and above was a higher scale, and 7 and above were very high. I shared with you last time in part 1 that I have taken this test a couple times and that my score is in the 7 above score. So I turned out okay, but there clearly were some things that I had to address in my adult life to manage some of the things that had happened to me as a kid. When we talk about children having trauma in life, we often think it to ourselves that it's physical trauma. It does not have to be physical trauma. It can be emotional, it can be environmental, it can be spiritual, and it can be about what we've observed in our caretaker. So you can see that the scores can go up quickly when you include those things. Our kids are just amazing beings. And between the ages of 1 and 7, again, that's a gross estimate, but between 1 and 7, a lot happens. And we often think they're too young to experience it. And the reaction I have is, no, they're not. They are consuming what's happening around them, whether they know it or not. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. It is 7:27. I do want to apologize. I did not anticipate that it would go this long, partly because I really wanted to go through these 2 activities. So my apologies. I hope it was worth your time and energy. Is there any question? Did people learn anything?
Definitely.
Okay. All right. I'm not catching any. Oh, we have some chats in here. Oh my. Okay, so this is kind of fun to reach this. Well, thank you for the comments. There was one question about what is the recidivism rate for drug addiction? How successful are treatments? I do want to respond to that. And it's the same for alcohol addiction. It's very low. So it's about 10%. Okay. Well, I love NAMI. I've been a volunteer since 2008. And I know that many people here are members of NAMI. And so I want to thank you for everything that you do for NAMI and for our community. And for those who aren't, if you're not a member, would like to become NAMI member, I would encourage you to get a membership. It's not much money and very, very supportive. And we do have a walk coming up, which is where we make our money so that we can provide free educational support and support groups for our family members who are dealing with a person with addiction and mental illness. So that is my little spiel for tonight. And I thank you very much for coming. And thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.